There we go. That should be better. Since WordPress 0.72, I've been using WordPress.
Wow.
And I've done pretty much a little bit of everything with WordPress. It's actually kind of ridiculous. I've been very fortunate in my career, but yeah, I've done it all. Plugins, themes. I think the only thing I haven't done, and actually it's something I'm definitely going to be doing in 2019, is trying to find a way to contribute to core. I think that's the only thing I've avoided in my career in WordPress.
Wow. That's
What about
awesome.
what
Yeah.
about you? You and I have known each other forever, so you're just as good, knowledgeable, historical with WordPress as I am.
Well, I was using WordPress before it was called WordPress. So I was actually on the the software that was a predator. It was called B2 Cafe Log, I believe.
Hmm.
And basically, I've been on WordPress ever since. Been an evangelist of WordPress. Um, but one of my real big passions around WordPress, actually, and one of the reasons why I started using WordPress was because it's awesome for content absorption by Google. It's easy to publish on it, and it's just one of the fastest growing technology platforms in the world that controls so much of the internet's biggest websites. Um, because of that expertise, I've been able to partner with some amazing clients, amazing business partners, and we've been able to sell over $15 million worth of web assets over the years. And some of those are my personal projects. Most of those, however, are client projects. And I'm excited to share some of those insights tonight with everybody and answer some questions afterwards. So that's what I'm looking forward to today.
Yeah, so I think we'll kind of go over, a little bit about what we're going to talk about. And it's not necessarily WordPress specific. Our discussion today will cover a lot of WordPress related stuff because we know that very well. But a lot of the tips, tricks, advice, and even resources can be used outside of kind of that WordPress ecosystem. So hopefully you'll be able to get something out of this, even if you don't use WordPress.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the key things is this isn't really about just WordPress. We happen to have a lot of WordPress experience. Our core business is based on WordPress, but this webinar is about business. It's not really about WordPress. So let's dive in and talk about digital strategy.
Yeah, so even if your business isn't directly selling online, people often look at a company website before deciding on their purchase. You'll see people grab their phone in the middle of a Best Buy to double check to see if Amazon's got a better price. If you're selling anything, if you're connecting with people online, you need to kind of figure out how you're going to do better than kind of the competitors in the space, how people are going to find your website, and does it look good? Something like 50 some odd percent or 60 some odd percent of all website visits these days are from mobile or tablet devices, and that number is growing by leaps and bounds all the time. And so you have to make sure it not only looks good on laptops, but also tablets and smartphones. And so that's pretty important. And if you don't have a digital strategy, a lot of companies these days don't. I highly recommend that you sit down, take a little bit of time, and figure that out. What does a digital strategy for you look like?
Yeah, I will touch base on one of those things you mentioned there that's, I think, overlooked by a lot of businesses is mobile. Mobile is faster growing than desktop. And the other one that's big that we don't really touch on much here, that maybe at another time we can, is voice. Voice is massive, and it's getting bigger as well. I think that if your business has a solid website, it loads fast on mobile and on a tablet, then the majority of users out there can access it. And that's the key thing. Is your site accessible?
So this slide here is actually something that you and I have talked about a lot. And so why don't you kind of go ahead and cover this one?
Well, we get a lot of clients that come to us and say, hey, will you build us a website? And people think of building a website like building a house, like you build it. Your web presence is not a painting of a house. It's not static or fixed forever. It's instead like an actual house. You literally have to keep working on it. So right now, behind me in my bathroom, I got some plumbing problems that I'm having to work on, and you literally I have to go in there and fix them. And your website's the same way. You need to constantly be maintaining it, improving on it, and really just making incremental, consistent change. I think that's the key thing. That's something I touch on all the time with our clients and even people I work with on the outside, is just saying, hey, have you been working on your website? What's going on with your site speed? What's going on with your design? Is it mobile responsive? Just constantly touching base on issues that really matter with your website. And I think that's the key thing that I constantly harp on is incremental, consistent change. And I think as a business, what is your long-term web presence strategy? A lot of times I see companies that have 7, 8, 9-year-old websites. Well, it's a good time today to start new. When was the last time your website was noticeably improved? It doesn't have to be massive change. You don't have to change your logo, but make small incremental change to get caught up to where technology is right now.
Yeah, and I think a quick one-line summary of that would be like, how confident are you that any page a visitor lands on will provide them value? Where will they receive value on any page on your website? And if you can't answer that for like your, everything, your privacy policy, your contact page, your about page, if they land there and they instantly don't know what to do or how to manage that page and convert for you as a customer in the way that you want them to convert, it's time to revisit, whether it's design, page layout, page speed, functionality, UI. We're going to go through a lot of those different things. And so we're going to break them down very simply. We're going to start with kind of infrastructure, which is kind of the technology, web hosting. We'll go over a little bit on design, some content stuff, some marketing stuff, and some search stuff. Each of these things create huge roadblocks online, but there are solutions. There are ways to resolve these things. You don't need to have a PhD in computer engineering or computer science to get through these kinds of things. You don't need to have an MBA to get through these kinds of things. A lot of them are very logic-based, and hopefully at the end of this you'll go, that totally made sense, right? I want everyone to walk away from this going, yeah, that seems easy. Like, I don't understand why it seems so overwhelming to me before.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is when we build a website, when clients build websites, they're building a website for themselves, when really they should be building the website for their customers or potential customers. And once they look at their business in that mindset, I think then it becomes much easier to start solving these problems. So let's jump right in. Let's look behind the curtain of technology, as we call it, infrastructure. And it can feel like there's a lot because there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of acronyms that don't make sense to most people. And there's constant changes. There's popular misconceptions and misinformations, and there's a massive learning curve. But it's overwhelming, even for me. So let's just kind of hop in piece by piece and start talking about some of it.
So funny enough, right? I do a little bit of programming. I don't consider myself a programmer by any stretch of the imagination. I do some DevOps stuff. I am not the world's foremost expert on DevOps. One of the things you're going to find with pretty much any company is that they don't know everything, right? They might have some pretty deep knowledge in a single subject, or they might have pretty shallow knowledge in multiple subjects. But guess what? There's this really cool thing called a search engine. It's called Google. It's very helpful. Pretty much anything you type in there, you're going to find some text, a video, some guides to help you deal with anything that you need in terms, especially in technology. Technology people just love to share that information. We were the first people to put stuff on there, right? Like user docs and like, details on like updates and all that stuff. So it's all there. It all exists at your fingertips. You just have to kind of search for it. And sometimes it might feel like it's difficult to figure out the search term you need, but Google's getting better at that even, right? You can put in some pretty weird things and get exactly what you're looking for. And hopefully, the inverse of that is people will find your business, your company in the exact same way, right? They're going to search for what they're looking for, and they're going to figure that out, and they're going to hopefully come to you and you're going to answer that question.
Well, and I faced some of that this week. So you don't consider yourself a coder. Well, I'm definitely not a coder. I haven't touched this stuff in a long time. I do dabble in some CSS now and then on specific problems, but I never picked up a book on CSS. Just from reading code that I figured it out. And literally, if you just type what you need into Google, you might be able to find a solution. And if you can't, there's somebody out there that can help you. So let's jump into something that I'm actually really passionate about. Maybe the thing I'm most passionate about in the world outside my daughter, website speed. And I don't know if you want to intro this, but one of the things that when I actually brought you on and we started working together, the first thing we started working on was website speed. And we don't do enough of it, but we found this really awesome quote. Basically, Amazon found that every 100 milliseconds of latency cost them 1% in sales. And Google found an extra 0.5 seconds in search page generation time dropped traffic by 20%. This was done by a talk, I believe, about 8 years ago. So it's probably actually bigger numbers now than what it is then. And I think most companies, they don't even know that that's important. But when I go to a website on my mobile device and it doesn't load in 2.5 seconds, I'm gone already. So the first thing is there's some really cool tools out there that'll help you figure out how fast your website loads, and they'll actually walk you through the process on how to fix them. Can you talk about some of those tools, Malcolm?
Yeah, sure. So typically we like to run sites through like Kissmetrics and Pingdom. They're both free tools available to you. You put in your URL. With Pingdom, it's a little bit more complicated. You can select different servers around the world that you want by default. Kissmetrics kind of does the one closest to you or closest to the server. I'm not exactly sure. But they both kind of do this analysis, right? They try to pull down your website as fast as possible, and they look at what's taking the most time and where the issues lie, and it's going to give you how fast your site loads, right? And then it's going to tell you potentially the things that you need to improve, where your issues are. It's going to make that very easy to kind of start to identify the improvements that you need to make in terms of technology. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so you've already kind of covered what a good site speed is. I mean, 2.5 seconds on mobile, we typically try to do about under 3 seconds as a good kind of benchmark from start to finish. And you're not alone in that 2.5 seconds. According to Kissmetrics, 79% of shoppers who are dissatisfied with website performance are less likely to buy from the same site again. And even worse, 53% of mobile visits leave a page that takes longer than 3 seconds to load. And that's from Google's global product lead of mobile web.
Wow. I didn't realize those numbers were that high, but I totally believe it. I was doing some online shopping on my phone this week. Site did not load in like 2.5 seconds. I was gone. I bought the product from somewhere else. Like literally, it happens to me pretty often.
And it doesn't have to be a product site, right? Like these are the same kinds of, these metrics really apply to any kind of site, right? If your site is just even a business, pamphlet site, if it's a content site, if it's, if you're doing a CPC, CPA, all these different kind of cost per whatever, if you're doing these advertising plays, the site speed is important too.
Absolutely. I mean, people don't realize that it's that sensitive of an issue. But here's an example. Let's say you have a competitor. Let's say you're a lawyer, for example, and there are 2 law firms in your neighborhood, in your region. Someone's going online to find a lawyer to help with divorce. They're going to go look for a divorce lawyer. One website loads fast, the other site loads slow. Who are you going to make the inquiry? You're going to go with the fast website. And I think some of the things, and most people just don't get that. In a business, they don't have the technical mindset to get that, and that's okay. That's why there's experts out there that focus on site speed. So let's talk about major contributors of a slow site. One of the big ones, if your site is slow, there's going to be a number of factors. Here's a couple that I know about. Number one, your server just might be slow. So you got to make sure you have a good server. Number two, your images. So working with the client recently, they like to upload massively large images that are absolutely unoptimized. And we have to go in and we fix those. The other one is, I was working on a client site recently, and they had no cache setup, 0 caching. And it absolutely slowed their website down. Every time the site loaded, it had to load the page over and over again. And it's hitting the database. It's doing all this technical stuff behind the scene, and it's just taking longer to load. The other one, and I'm not an expert on it, but it's something that I try to absolutely minimize on every site that I work with, is JavaScript. The least amount of JavaScript, the better. Keep as much of it as you can in the footer so it loads after the rest of the site loads. Next, we have content delivery network. And this is a big one. I'm a massive believer in content delivery networks, but basically what they do is it takes all your important files that it takes to run your website. So like your CSS, your images, other important like JavaScript that runs your website, it actually sets it to servers all around the world, so that when a user in one part of the world is looking for your website, or one part of the country is looking for your website, it's pulling that data from a server that's closest to them, so it loads your website a lot faster. And a lot of CDNs actually come with image optimization built in, so it kind of hits you from both sides. The other thing, lastly, the one that always slows your website down. So we were working with a client this week, and they were like, hey, my site's kind of slow right now. And I looked in the inspect element, and there was all these third-party tools. So they were running Crazy Egg and some various different tools to track their users, all kinds of tracking tools. And it was absolutely slowing their website down because their page wouldn't load, because these tools were installed in the header. So because they're installed in the header, that tool has to load first before the web page content finishes loading. So then it added literally an extra 2 seconds onto their page speed time.
It's funny that you say that. Like I've experienced this with all kinds of things. It's not just kind of user tracking, but even something as simple as a Twitter embed, right? When you use a Twitter embed in WordPress, it actually uses extra JavaScript to be able to pull that in and make it look fancy. If you replace that embed with an image of the tweet, one, if the person deletes the tweet, guess what? Your image is there forever. And instead of having like a weird issue with the embed saying like tweet no longer available, you have the image. Two, the image is usually smaller than the time it takes for the JavaScript to load and make that tweet look nice and pull from that third-party server. So honestly, I get that people love to do embeds with all these different things, YouTube videos and tweets and Instagram and all that stuff, but it requires JavaScript typically, and it requires waiting for third-party scripts to load from external sources. So you might want to look at trying to reduce those as well. It's not just user tracking.
Well, anytime you can control the content that's on your website, the better. So instead of pulling in these third-party tools like you're talking about, take a picture of the embed, take a picture of the YouTube screenshot, so that you're not necessarily linking directly to the YouTube video. You're actually just take a screenshot, and then the video loads after. There's all these different things, but you want to control the content on your site, and that will greatly speed up your website.
So you touched on it as your first point, but it might be your web host. You and I, probably between the two of us, have probably worked with, a low estimate would be at least like 100 different web hosts.
Yeah, I've worked with all of them. I've worked with all of them.
And some are better than others, right? Like they're not all bad. And some don't necessarily even realize the issues that you're having. My concern has always been the job of a web host is really to provide you space on the internet. They don't care how fast your website loads. They really don't. It's not really their priority most of the time. You really have to kind of chase after them and say, look, like there's something wrong here. This should be faster. Like what is going on? And even then, sometimes they won't put the effort in to figure it out. I've been very fortunate with a few web hosts lately. There's definitely on average for hosts over a certain threshold of money, it's getting way better. If you're still looking kind of at the cheaper hosts, you're going to be responsible for a lot of the things that web hosts should be responsible for themselves.
Right. No, I think that's the key thing is we're much better than we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, there weren't as many options, but your web host absolutely might be the issue. I'll give us a real world example for you. 10 years ago, I was I was hosting primarily all my sites on DreamHost, which, mind you, has improved a lot. But back in the day, they would put 100, 200 sites on one shared server. And anytime that one of our sites would get traffic, anyone on that server, everyone else was affected. And it slowed you down. And when we talk about roadblocks, we're talking about roadblocks to growing your business, managing your business. And if you have your business on a shared server, you're just going to have more headache, more problems, because you won't have a fix. You won't understand what the fix is. So sometimes you're better off paying more to solve some of these problems.
And it's funny you bring that up, because we've actually had that happen. We had someone transfer over to our platform, and they saw their business like go what was like 4x or 8x over a couple of months, because they're actually able to close some purchases. Like customers that were going to their site were actually able to get through the entire checkout process without getting frustrated.
Yeah, there was one of our clients that literally were having so many problems with their web host. And actually, it's a mainstream, big name web hosting company, and massive. I mean, actually, the crazy thing is they actually host their same servers in the same data centers we do. Excuse me, but they just didn't know what they were doing. They didn't have things set up correctly. They crammed too many servers into their data centers, into their servers that they're managing, and it just was not working out. So sometimes going to a better provider, people that actually care about speed, people that actually care about performance, is the way to go.
So every couple of months, I would say maybe every 3 to 6 months, you should be sitting down and thinking, what are our infrastructure roadblocks? What piece of our technology stack, what piece of the way that we do business is slowing us down from acquiring more customers, is slowing us down from closing more business? And really kind of self-reflect on that. I mean, I know as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, you're busy. I get it. But again, we're talking about people who have gone and had like 4, 8, 10, 12, 20, 20x improvements on their sales by just kind of focusing on infrastructure. So don't let that fall by the wayside. Don't let that go into the background. It's a super important piece of this puzzle.
Absolutely. And it's something that in the beginning, when we started our business, I don't think we took it as seriously as we could have. And now that we've been doing it for, over a year, I think we have a better understanding of it, of how valuable, how important infrastructure is for every business. And not everyone wants to spend hundreds of dollars up front to make sure that their site runs. But actually, the return on investment on that expenditure is massive. And we've seen that time and time again with our clients. So let's talk a little bit about our experience, and we can touch on how our experience has led us to some of these WordPress hosts and WordPress support, because most of our clients are WordPress based. We could talk about hosts. So lead with PressTitan. First off, Malcolm and I started this company, PressTitan. We consider ourselves the fastest, best WordPress hosting literally on the planet. You're not going to get any better support out there, and there's nobody else that cares about your website more than us. And I say that because I'm always online. I'm always jumping on any support ticket, any request. I'm always jumping on there to fix it 24 hours a day. I know Malcolm's the same way.
Let's talk about some of these other ones. Yeah.
So let's jump into the next one. And I have some experience with it, WP Engine. Mm-hmm. Now, in my opinion, WP Engine might be just one of the most solid companies in the industry. It's one that I recommend to people if they're just making the leap from shared hosting and they want to go with a managed platform. I would definitely recommend WP Engine. They've got fast servers, but the thing that sets them apart is their WordPress experts that man their support department are really just hands down. I'll let you touch on Kinsta. Kinsta is a company that we also used to use.
Yeah, so if you have a little bit more technical knowledge, or you have someone in your life that has a little bit more technical knowledge, Kinsta provides a hosting platform that is very powerful, very fast, but not necessarily always for beginners. At least in our experience, they have a custom control panel that they use to manage things. It's not cPanel or anything like that. And again, I'm not a big fan of either like cPanel or any of those control panels, but having a custom one definitely kind of made us run through a little bit of hoops when we tried it out. But again, very fast servers. If you know a little bit about what you're doing, great option to look at.
All right, so I'll touch on the last of our WordPress hosts that we strongly recommend, and it's one that I've played around with, and I recommend to people that it's WPX Hosting, and it's a company that I happen to know the owner, not as a close friend or anything, but as an acquaintance. And WPX Hosting is really amazing in terms of their customer support. Literally, they respond in seconds. Their servers are great. They have their own private network based in the US and in the UK. And they're fast. Now, they're also affordable. So somebody that's on the fence on infrastructure, but still wants a fast website that's really affordable, I'd definitely say WPX Hosting is the way to go. That aren't ready to make the leap to the bigger guys out there like the Kinstas, the WP Engine, or Press Titan. Now let's talk about the next stage. So let's say you have a website. There's a lot of maintenance that goes into that. Can you talk a little bit more, Malcolm, about WordPress support?
Sure. So one of the primary things that differentiates us from someone like WP Engine or Kinsta is really the support aspect, right? It's a combination. We're not just hosts, we also do support. And the reason why that's important is WordPress updates happen, major updates every 3 to 4 months, minor updates kind of every 2 weeks. Plugins, if you have more than half a dozen plugins installed in your WordPress installation, you probably go in there and always see that there's a new update available. And as mature as the WordPress ecosystem has become, that doesn't mean there aren't issues with updating. And there aren't issues with backups, and there aren't issues with performance, and there aren't issues with WordPress themes or child themes, or right. There's all these things that you don't necessarily need to be an expert in. You just need to find someone you can trust that is. And so, other than us, we definitely recommend WP Buffs. They're an interesting company with a focus just on the support side. They don't care which hosting provider you use. They're just there to make sure that your WordPress is updated and backed up and running well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got great things to say about Joe Howard. He runs a stand-up business there. So let's move along here. We'll talk about another thing I'm really passionate about, WordPress optimization. WordPress optimization is the idea that your site can be sped up through caching, through minification. It's basically just serving up the fastest version of your site all the time, and a lot of that focuses on caching. So I'll talk about the first couple tools, and we'll let Malcolm close out this section. But WP Rocket is literally the best caching plugin on the planet. I say that hands down.
How do you know
hands
that?
down. I know that because I've tested them all. Literally, I have tested, I believe, every WordPress optimization and caching plugin that there is, and I like a lot of them. I don't like half of them. But WP Rocket is fast. It works basically on every platform. It has the least amount of conflicts. It's easiest to set up for the end user. Even somebody that's not an expert in WordPress can buy the premium plugin and set it up, get it running, because they just walk you through the setup. There's a lot of support docs out there. There's a great support team. So even if you don't get it set up, you can shoot them an email and they'll say, hey, sign up for one of our packages. We'll actually set it up for you. It's just awesome. And literally, when I tested their caching speed of WP Rocket against no caching, it sped up my site. Like one of our client sites, it sped it up 2 seconds. 2 seconds. And we're talking, it's already on a fast server, but we put WP Rocket on it, and it made it 2 seconds faster. So that's how much I believe in that product. Like, it's fast. And now the next one is Breeze. Breeze is a free plugin. So let's say you don't want to spend the $100 for this premium plugin. There is one out there that I strongly recommend called Breeze. It's a caching plugin done by the guys over at the hosting provider Cloudways. And they have given this plugin away. It's fast. You basically install it. You tell it what you want. If you have a CDN, you can input the data there, and it'll walk you through the minification if you want to minify your site. And it's just easy, and it's free. There's no support, so if you're not as technically savvy, you might have some hurdles, but it is free, so you don't have to pay anything, and pretty much it's simple to set up out of the box.
Yeah, and then there's WP Disable. It's not really, it's not a full-featured plugin in that it doesn't have some of the features that WP Rocket and Breeze has. It's really just focused on scaling back some of the things in WordPress that maybe your site doesn't need. And they explain like those different things as you go through it. I found this to be a great way, kind of as an initial thing, or even as a mix with some of these other tools, to be able to kind of crank out a little bit of extra speed in WordPress. You can disable all kinds of things that 99% of you out there probably don't need. The only caveat, of course, is if you don't understand what you're disabling, you might disable something you do need, which isn't ideal, but again, a great option for you to look at if you're looking for some kind of speed improvement in WordPress.
Awesome. So I'll open this one. Image optimization is something that, originally I honestly was a little confused about. It's scary because when you think about your images, or if you own a small business, maybe you took the images, you upload them on your site, and you're done. That's the way things used to be. And that's the way I thought it always was, but it's not. You need to optimize your images so that you're actually serving up the smallest image with the highest quality. And the tool I recommend for that is called Smush Pro. It's done by the team over at WPMU Dev, and literally it's an affordable. It's not super affordable, but it's an affordable plugin that comes with their membership plan that just does everything out of the box. It'll do a bulk edit, so it'll just take all the images that are in your WordPress media file, optimize them, and serve up the right one at the right moment.
Yeah, I love what they do over there. They have a free version of it as well, which is decent. Not necessarily, in my opinion, the best image optimization plugin at that free level, but if you're paying for their membership and getting access to all the tools that WPMU Dev provides, it's the value there is ridiculous. It's over the top, and Smush Pro is pretty darn amazing. Other plugins are like Resmush It and EWWW Image Optimizer. Both really great options. EWWW, or EW Image Optimizer, has actually kind of been a pretty popular choice in a lot of the reviews that I've seen. It sometimes is able to eke out a little bit more in terms of reducing file size. But again, the trade-off in that is when you get kind of to those extreme levels, you're usually losing a little bit of your image quality to kind of get those extra little reductions in file size. So you have to decide what's important. If you're a photographer and that's your business, you maybe want to use like something like Smush Pro, or just kind of tweak the settings for these other ones to make sure that you don't lose any quality, which means your images will be a little bit bigger, but probably worth it in that business. If you're on the other side and images are not the primary way that you sell clients and customers, well, maybe, kind of smushing them down as much as possible and losing a little bit of image quality is okay by you. And if you don't use WordPress, and even if you do, there are online services that'll help you with this. There's a website called TinyPNG and TinyJPEG that will do image optimization for you. Most image editing tools have image optimization in them. Again, the trade-off is usually quality versus file size, so you have to play around with that. But other than video and audio, other than like multimedia like that, images are usually the biggest thing on your website. And so optimizing them can have the biggest impact.
Yes, and we'll move along to the next set of tools, and I'll just skip over one because Cloudflare is our content delivery network that we use for a lot of our clients, and it actually has an image optimization platform built in, and it does it automatically to where you just click a little button and Cloudflare will automatically take your images and serve up the right ones, saving a lot of data and speeding up your website. So let's talk a little bit about content delivery networks. And Malcolm, you've set up all of these different content delivery networks for our clients. In your opinion, where do we start? I mean, why would you use a content delivery network? How easy is it to use for the end user, and what are the benefits?
Yeah, if you're a non-technical user, Cloudflare all the way. Very simple to set up. They walk you through the process. Their docs are head and shoulders above everyone else's. You can
Nice.
start free and go to relatively cheap and then go super expensive if you want. They have all kinds of options, all kinds of add-ons. You can go nuts. So as your business scales, you can also kind of scale Cloudflare to kind of ever improve your site in terms of, they have like a firewall built in for security. They have all kinds of things. So Cloudflare, easy. The other three, CDN 77, Key CDN, and Bunny CDN, the process for setting them up and using them are all pretty much the same. They're a little bit more technical than Cloudflare, but not by a lot. They're fairly user-friendly. I've been leaning kind of more towards CDN 77 lately. I think their user interface is it's slick, it's fast, it's pretty. It gives lots of wonderful reports that make me feel good about what I'm doing. It gives a lot of control very simply. Where Key CDN, Bunny CDN, it's kind of hit or miss sometimes on the control systems, but all of them are great options. You would not be doing wrong by using any of these content delivery networks.
No, and interestingly enough, one of the things that we have done in our experience is track and test the speed of all of these CDNs, and these four are hands down some of the four best CDNs on the market. They all rank in the top 10 in terms of global performance, U.S. performance, regional performance, and every region in the U.S. So you're literally getting four of the best CDNs that we recommend here.
Yeah, and they have slightly different pricing, but not necessarily too different. Your mileage may vary depending on what kind of files you're serving up, the amount of data you're transferring. Some of them definitely have plans that skew more towards people who are pushing a lot of video. So you want to research those to make sure you get the best one for the amount of data you're transferring.
Absolutely. So we'll go back and talk a little bit about caching. Like I said, I talked a lot about WP Rocket already, but it literally is the best caching and optimization plugin that I recommend for everybody. We'll talk about WP Super Cache because I haven't actually used that plugin in quite a while, but I remember it being one of the best. You probably have some more recent experience using WP Super Cache and W3 Total Cache. Can you tell me about those two plugins a little bit?
So they're both free. Neither of them are really made for what I would consider kind of the non-technical user. WP Rocket holds your hand a lot more than either of these other two. They're both very good at what they do, but there's a lot of settings. W3 Total Cache especially has pages upon pages upon pages of settings and toggles that you can turn on and off. And so just, the caveat as always is be very careful, look into it, understand it before you kind of change any of these things. They can both change certain configuration files in WordPress. So if you set them up and then try to undo it, sometimes that can be a little bit difficult as well. But again, well developed, continually updated. These two caching plugins have probably been around forever, where WP Rocket is a little bit newer on the market, which in some ways is an advantage or a disadvantage depending on how you look at it. But yeah, these plugins are all fairly good, and I still think WP Rocket's the best. I'm kind of with David Krug on that.
Yeah, for me, it's just a matter of it's easy, it's faster. I just look at metrics when I do things. I try not to make emotional decisions about it. So we'll go into something that I am not super passionate about, actually, but I feel like it's an important part of everyone's website. It's the thing that everyone thinks about when they think about websites is my design. So we'll talk about, does it matter how it looks? I mean, that's really, honestly, I can't remember what most websites look like anymore. Design can be distracting if it's done wrong. So there's that, right? But if you remember back a couple years ago, Craigslist, right? One of the biggest websites in the world had like the ugliest design that was basically the same for like 20 years. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't. Design was just simple, and it just had information, and you got through it, you navigated, and it worked. But the Design Council found that companies that put an emphasis on design outperformed those that didn't by as much as 200%. So there's a lot of facts out there that say design is really important. It's part of it is it develops, if you have a strong design, your visitors are going to trust you. And that plays into it, I think. And bad design can leave people, well, unwilling to trust your brand or business. And this could play out with whether you're like a lawyer or whether you're an e-commerce company. If you have a shopping cart experience that's ugly, no one's going to trust their credit card in your shopping cart. So I think if you look at bigger businesses like Amazon or eBay, they have really slick designs and people trust them. Not only are they big brands, but their design leaves you with a sense of trust. And I think those are things that it's a roadblock for a lot of people, because when they think of a web design, they think really expensive. And I think that's like this psychological thing that people are confused about. So we'll move into confusion, because design doesn't have to be expensive, number one, and it can be easy, number two.
Yeah.
So if you want to jump in on some of those areas that people get confused about.
I mean, these are really simple bullet points, simple facts, and I hope they help you kind of whittle down where you should be looking, right? So in terms of your primary navigation, there really should be less than 10 options up there. Any more, and you kind of get option paralysis. Where do I go? What do I do? What do I click on? There's too many things. So try to kind of keep your navigation as concise as possible, especially your primary navigation, because this is how your users are going to be able to interact with your site. And if they don't know where to go, they're not going to convert. Sidebar, Krug and I actually were talking about this earlier today. Stop throwing everything in the sidebar. Like, I don't know how many sites I go to where sometimes the sidebar is longer than the content of the page. They have like they have their Instagram and their Twitter and their Facebook and their categories and their date-based archives and their tag-based archives and their shared like and friend and all this stuff in the sidebar. Just the more you throw in there, the more people become blind to it, right? We've become, you've probably heard the term ad blind before. This is beyond that, right? Sidebar blind. There's just, it's too much crud in there. That's not where I want to be. Give me the article. And then go ahead.
Let's step back a little bit, because I want to talk about navigation a little bit more, because I've developed this, and this touches on sidebar stuff too. It really boils down to a couple things. Navigation and sidebar. These are areas that distract the user from your content. So my strategy on navigation, have the least amount of navigation as you possibly can, A, and B, stop throwing everything in your sidebar. So literally have nothing in your sidebar. And I know someone that lives by this philosophy now. They have no navigation, they have no sidebar, and all they have is content. Because that's really what people want, is content.
And speaking of content, a lot of people don't think about, you'll hear people talk about the sales funnel, right? How do you do your sales funnel online? And really at the end of the day is, what do you want people to do after they're done reading your content? Whether that's your about page, your contact page, or a blog article, a news post, a press release, at the end of that content piece, you need to give them their next action. They do not know what to do. And actually, it's funny. I've seen some stuff where people have removed comments from their sites because it was actually giving them more than one option at the end of an article about what they should do. Sign up for our newsletter or comment on the post. And people were commenting on the post and not signing up for the newsletter. So you have to really decide what you want people to do at the end of your article. How are they going to convert for you? What is important to you? And get rid of the rest. There's a great quote here by Steve Krug. I'm not sure how do you pronounce his last name, if it's the same as yours or not.
It's the same name. He pronounces his name Krug. Steve Krug, literally one of the web usability experts foremost in the world. Forever.
I mean, since like the dawn of the web, this guy has been spouting like amazing knowledge. So if you ignore him, that's kind of at your own peril. And I love this quote. If there's one thing you can learn by working on a lot of different websites, it's that almost any design idea, no matter how appallingly bad, can be made usable in the right circumstances with enough effort. I mean, I would like to see him like get sliders and some other things to be usable even with the right amount of effort. But, people talk about like the web design rules, but web design's kind of artistic, right? And in art, there really is no rules. But on the flip side, your clients, your customers, your visitors, they actually kind of determine the rules for you. So you have to kind of figure out what the right circumstances are and what effort you need to put in there to make it usable.
Yeah. So let's move forward a little bit. Content, again, your design is about showcasing your content. And so let's talk about how to do that. There's a lot of different solutions out there in terms of design, a lot of tools and resources to help you overcome this roadblock of, I need a design, I need it now, I need to improve my website. So I'm going to jump into my favorite one first off. A couple of my favorite ones. So Theme Forest is done by the guys over at Envato, and they've been around for forever. I can't remember when they weren't around, so must have been around for a long time. But what they are is a marketplace. Think of them like the eBay of WordPress themes.
That's a good way of putting it.
They literally just have everything. Every kind of theme you could possibly imagine, whether you're running a farm, whether you're running a law office, a construction company, a grocery store, a restaurant, anything. They've got themes for everybody. They're literally, that's what they focus on. It's a great entry point for people to help solve that design problem. The next one I absolutely recommend is a fairly unknown WordPress theme called Marketer's Delight. It's done by Alex Mangini, literally one of the foremost experts in all the things I believe in terms of usability, in terms of speed, performance, focusing on images, minimizing your navigation, and just easy to customize. It's a guy I really recommend, marketersdelight.net. Check it out. Some other resources that I've used, that we use in our business and our clients use, Envato Elements. You can actually get WordPress themes if you want there. You can get photos, stock photos, so you won't get in trouble for copywriting. Logo templates, all kinds of things to make your website better. Another one that we use a lot for client work is called Codable. If I have a simple little project that I'm doing for somebody else or need to customize something and I'm pinched for time, and because we don't want to have 8 people on staff to help manage some of our coding issues, because neither one of us are full-time coders. We both code on the fly if we have to. We go to Codable, which is basically, again, it's an eBay, basically a marketplace for WordPress experts. So you can get a plugin designed, you can get a theme built from the ground up, or you could take a theme you found on ThemeForest and get it customized for your business. They're great. It's really simple. There's basically like an escrow type platform where you deposit money to get your work done. When you approve the work, the money gets released. So and everyone there is certified, and they've been WordPress experts for years. And I'll let you touch on the last two because I don't use them too much, but I get some inspiration from both of them.
Yeah, and so I mean, the question I always get is, where do I find a designer? How do I find someone that can help me, transform my web experience? And I would say Dribbble and Behance are both great galleries of not just inspiration, but the people are there. You can access them. You can contact them. If they've done a website design that you like, or if they've done a logo that you've liked, contact them, reach out, see what it would cost to get your own done. They're available. They're accessible. They're not hiding somewhere under a cave. Like Dribbble and Behance make it really easy to find really great designers.
Yeah, and again, to close this design section out, design, at least my philosophy on it, design is about presenting your content. Really. It's about solving your customers' problems by presenting it in words or video, whatever format, images, whatever format you're using to reach your customers, to communicate with them. But I think that's where we move into the next section. The next roadblock that a lot of businesses have is content. What are your thoughts on that?
So I started my introduction to WordPress as like a professional blogger. I was actually paid to write articles about, not like actually about WordPress, about laptops, about digital cameras and stuff like that. And I was paid like a whole $3.33 an hour, and I was loving every minute of it, working crazy, ridiculous hours. And You know, that was back kind of in a lot of ways, kind of the heyday or early days of blogging. And, you know, there's so many people out there that write constantly and are going, and they contact me and they go, I don't get it. I've written like 1,000 articles and I'm not getting any conversions. You know, because they think that just writing words will bring in customers, right? It's not how many words you have on your site. It's about the quality and value of the writing, the value of the writing, right? How helpful is it to the person searching on Google to see what you've written? What's that going to do for them? And of course, the balancing point, and this is something that a lot of people struggle with, is don't just write for search engines at the exclusion of your visitors or audience. We see people doing this all the time where they're like keyword stuffing to the max, right? Like, don't forget to buy your printer. You love printers, right? Printer, printer, printer. And it's like, what the heck is this? No one wants to read this. No human wants to read this, right? It's better to have well-written articles that match your user demographics. And I love this quote by Steve Martin. Be so good they can't ignore you, right? You want to have the best content in your niche or in your target audience or in your business goal, right? This is a major part of your digital strategy. What does that text look like? What does that content look like? What do those words look like? What kind of emotion, what kind of resonance are you creating through what you're doing? And you want to be so good that they can't ignore you.
Right. Well, a couple of things to touch on there. Content. Conversion rates are 6 times higher for content marketing adopters than non-adopters. Businesses that publish 16 plus posts a month get nearly 3.5 times the traffic than businesses that publish only 0 to 4 articles. And the content marketing costs are 62% less than traditional marketing and generates nearly 3 times the amount of leads. And literally, I mean, that just emphasizes the thing here. Content is king, literally.
But what kind of mistakes do people do? Why is content not working for them? You know, they're writing all these articles, right? They're doing their 14 a month. David, why aren't they getting the conversions? What's happening here?
Well, there's a lot of issues here. I was actually dealing with this issue with a client this week, and all of these things apply. So burying the lead. Users are impatient. So put the hook at the start of the article. You want to engage the customers. These are your customers that come to your site or potential customers. So create an article or articles or information that gets them engaged right at the beginning. They just don't have time. You want to be able to make the article scannable. The common roadblock is people get content that they've bought from somebody or get written by someone in-house, and they put it all on the website, and it's just a big block of content. Nobody likes to read blocks of content. You got to break it up into sections that are easily scannable. So, you know, each section's using, you know, your proper tags to get people to scan down the page, quickly understand what the article is about so they can then, you know, grab the pieces that are engaging for them. Again, we're going to touch on this one. It's not too long or too short. You want content that is engageable, but you also want content that, you know, isn't too short, because you want to be able to get people to go down a path. You want to lead people down a path. Search engines typically find it easier to classify content over 200 words, and visitors typically can't easily read more than 1,200 words in a sitting. Now, there's actually some data around this that, like, if you look, all the top ranked websites, 1 to 3, top 10 really even, almost all of the minimum articles on those pages, somewhere in that range of 1,200 words to 2,000 words. So you're teetering on too much information and not enough. And you definitely want to have at least 1,200 words, in my opinion, at least over 1,000. The other thing that it's so horrible, if you go to a website and they have bad grammar or they're using improper words, typically it is best to write one step above your target audience. So you want to sound slightly more intelligent, and there's some great tools that you can use to do that. There's Grammarly, there's plugins built into WordPress that'll help you, you know, clean up your spelling and your grammar.
Yeah, we'll
So
get
I
to
think
some
that's
of
really
those a little
important.
bit later. One of the complaints that I always hear is, I don't have time to write articles. I have so many other things to do. I don't want to create content. Let someone else do that. How do I find those people? Right? I'm going to go over the negative ones. We would totally recommend avoiding Fiverr, Upwork, classified websites like Kijiji or Craigslist. These are not the places you are going to find high quality content for your site. You're going to find kind of the 1 to 2 cent per word kind of writers who are going to be great potentially for search engines, but not necessarily like English as a first language kind of writers. So please avoid them. I know there are a lot of people buying articles on Fiverr, and I bet you if you ran it through certain tools, you'd find out that that same article's probably been sold to like 10 other people. It's kind of the only way they can scale the businesses that they have and the things that they do on some of these sites. So just be very careful of those sites.
All right, so we'll talk a little bit about some tools that I recommend. I have clients that have used them or I've used them. One is called Writer Access, and what they are is a platform. I know this is cliche, but it's the eBay of writers. Literally, it's a place where all writers have come on, and they work with this company to create high-quality content. They have a rating system, somewhat complex rating system, but you get articles written for you anywhere from, I believe it's around 4 cents an article, all the way up to 4 cents a word, excuse me, all the way up to $1, $2 a word. We're talking experts, though. We're talking professors, CEOs, people that jump on there to write a research article for another company, and that's one of them that I really recommend. Another is a fairly new company. It's called SEO Content Hero, and what they are is they're a fairly affordable company. Joe Graceberry, a associate acquaintance of mine, who basically specializes in writing amazing feature content for your website. I highly recommend them. They're an independent company, so if you're not wanting to go through a major marketplace, they can handle your everything from writing the content to putting it on your website if you need them to. Another I recommend is called Text Broker. They have been around for a long time. They're similar to Writer Access in that they're basically a marketplace for writers. They are slightly more affordable than Writer Access and different ratings for the writers, but you can buy really high premium articles for your website. They also do copywriting. They do editing. So if you just need content edited, they can do that as well. There's another company run by Dustin Carlson. He started up Presto Media, and what they do is you give them some topics, and they will, like SEO Content Hero, they will write articles for your website. This is done by professional journalists who work for some very large mainstream companies like Business Insider and others, Huffington Post, and a bunch of other major publications that will write really high quality articles. This is a starting point. There are a lot of different ways you can get writers for your website. These are just a starting point. Do you have any other feedback about that, Malcolm, in your experience?
Yeah, so the only thing that we don't have on here that I've done before is that there are like writing job boards out there where you can find writers specifically for your niche that are kind of almost like freelance staff writers in a way. And I've used them a few times. The ProBlogger job board is one of the ones. It's like $50 to put an ad on, and you'll get like 100 or 200 people like offering to work for you, and you can kind of figure out who you have the best connection with. Sometimes those one-on-one relationships are the best, but if you don't want to maintain, cultivate, organize that aspect, then definitely these providers are some of the best that I would definitely recommend.
Nice. So content isn't just words. There's images, animated GIFs, video, audio, infographics even. And there's some great tools out there to create some of this multimedia. One of them is Canva, Stencil, Snappa, Biteable, Slidely Promo, Shaker. There's all kinds of tools out there to create different kind of multimedia experiences, and you can repurpose them. So you could even take, an image and turn it into a series of images and turn it into a slideshow. You can take your blog post and turn it into an infographic. There's so many different tools out there. I any company that's publishing online, basically every company should be publishing online. They need to be creating more content than just words. People need to be engaged in multiple different points of contact. And these are just some of the tools that you can get started with.
We know someone who he took like his favorite quotes from his articles, his posts and writing that he had done, and made images that he then put on Pinterest, which linked back to the article. And he did like thousands of them. Like for every post, he had like 3 or 4 quotes, and he did like a couple of different styles for each one. And he just like flooded it and really did like the keyword research to understand what that would look like. And that's just one example of where he took content that he had written, converted it to images, put it on an image-focused website, and was able to derive a huge amount of traffic from that.
Yeah, and there's people doing the same thing in Instagram, for example. It doesn't have to be Pinterest. You can take the same images, put them on Pinterest, you can put them on Facebook, and it just becomes another marketing channel that people can engage your content in different mediums out there. So here's the deal. When we talk about these different things, what kind of content should you create? What other tools are out there to help you solve your content hurdles that you recommend?
So Copyscape is one. So when I mentioned before that on Fiverr, if you ran your article through a program, it would probably tell you it's on a bunch of other websites. Copyscape is the tool that would tell you that. They have, I think, a basic free option and then a paid one where you buy credits. And it's really inexpensive and super important if you're using freelance writers to figure out if anything that they're giving you has been taken from somewhere else. So protect your butt. Use Copyscape. Really helpful.
Yeah, so I've used Grammarly quite often. I recommend everybody use that. It's basically an online grammar checker, spell checker, all in one. Yoast SEO is a tool that we use on websites to basically optimize the words that you're putting on the page, the headlines, different keywords, meta descriptions, etc. BuzzSumo. What's BuzzSumo, Mel?
So if you're trying to figure out, just like Google Trends, if you're trying to figure out what's popular right now, what's really kind of on an uptick in terms of popularity, if you can find tangents to connect yourself to the things that are becoming popular, sometimes you can get a huge amount of traffic or interest in your brand. So let's say there's a new update to Fortnite, and all of a sudden you see that there's a huge uptick, and you find out what the new update is, and you make a product relating to that update, and then you can tie those two things together, right? So BuzzSumo and Google Trends will help you figure out where those traffic peaks are and where those popular trends are.
Now, the last two I've never heard of.
Oh, interesting. So Pixabay is a stock photography website, pretty popular, pretty easy to use, free stock photography. Love free stock photography. I love stock photography that has really good licensing that lets me use it for all kinds of different things. That's what Pixabay lets you do. And VideoHive is another one of Envato's marketplaces. So if you're looking for stock video, VideoHive has stock video for like everything you could possibly need. And I mean, stock photos and stock videos are kind of, wah-wah sometimes. So you really kind of have to dig through and filter through kind of some of the crud. But those things exist and are available for you to kind of use for your content development.
Nice. So now you get the content on your site. What do you do with it? Or is it supposed to throw money at the audience, right, to get people onto the site? Like, how do you get people to find your site?
Yeah, and I mean, we're kind of reaching that second renaissance in online marketing, right? All of the old school big companies, they're spending millions of dollars on like social media to try to figure out how they can capitalize on it. There are people out there who are creating these marketing companies that say, we're the expert at, Instagram or whatever, and I can get you 1 million followers or whatever. So, throwing money at the audience is not necessarily going to make you successful in today's digital world. And so you have to figure out how you can kind of attract attention. I love this quote by Matthew Inman from The Oatmeal. If you haven't seen those comics, you definitely should. put your energy into making things that are likable, not some douchey social media strategy. So he's basically saying, like, if you, I hate to use this phrase, but like if you build it, they will come. It's more if you build something that people want, that provides value, then you don't necessarily need to market it in the same way. It'll almost market itself and have a snowball effect. And we've seen this in some really, like for a while there, list posts, like really good, well-written list posts would snowball, right? People would link to it, link to sections of it, share sections of it, and it would just go nuts in terms of marketing.
Right, and I think you touched on something a few minutes ago that I think will kind of segue us into the next section. Define and segment your audience. You got to know what people are really wanting to engage in and what people are interested in. So what do you know about the people that are interested in your product, and how can you provide each interest group with the maximum amount of value? If you can define your audience, break down those two groups, define what they are, then you can target those groups more efficiently and effectively. You were just mentioning about someone who created some images, some quotes, and they put it on one of these image sharing websites because they were able to define their audience and create these, pieces of content. They were able to drive thousands and thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of visitors because they able to segment and define their audience so easily, and really basically just hit home runs each and every time they were creating content.
Yeah, and I mean, we're not going to talk about it too much today, but I mean, at some point, I'd love to just spend an hour talking about, authentic marketing, right? Authentic branding, authentic engagement. I think those are kinds of key phrases that we're going to see growing as we hit this second renaissance of online marketing. Because I don't know about you, but I'm like pretty ad blind. I'm pretty marketing blind for the most part. I don't have cable TV. I don't really listen to like normal radio. I mean, I try to avoid marketing everywhere I go. And so when you do have that opportunity to market to me, it better be authentic. It better be engaging, or you've lost me forever.
Yeah. So here's an example. Let's say you run a company, a fitness company. I might search for people on YouTube and Twitter that are promoting fitness and sponsor them. And this is what's called influencer marketing, or I call it, authentic marketing, because you're literally taking something that people are already passionate about. So you might find out that a Fortnite streamer, Nick does push-ups every time he wins. I didn't know. Is that true?
Yeah, he does. I don't watch him in Fortnite. He does push-ups, like 15 push-ups.
That's so awesome. I need to find his stream. I love Fortnite, so I got to check that out. So if there's an overlap between his audience and my product, so let's say I sell fitness balls or something, then maybe it's an engagement where I could send him a fitness ball and get him to start using my fitness ball, sponsor him to use my fitness ball, and share that with his audience. This hits on so many points. You're creating, high quality content. He's creating it for you. He's sharing about your product, and you're able to engage an audience through someone who's highly influential in his space.
Yeah, and this quote from Gary Vaynerchuk kind of sums that up, right? Like, word of mouth works now much more than ever. At reply, every single person. And basically, like, by working with someone who's an influencer, they kind of are that middle person that helps you connect to those other people. But even personally, like he has stories where when he was building Wine Library, his dad's wine business, he would go on Twitter and search for like any conversation about wine, any conversation about like France, any conversation about like anything that he kind of knew, New Jersey, football, playing cards, and he would interact with these people. And you look at him now, and he's running VaynerMedia. He's like trying to build up the money to buy an NFL sports team. Like, he has this like goal in mind, and as much as he kind of rubs some people the wrong way, he really does interact with everyone, and right. He finds the value in that, not necessarily in the short term, but in the medium to long term. And so you kind of have to figure out where your values lie, what your goals are, how soon do you need that turned around, and see how you can kind of, join the conversation in a way.
So this next slide is something I think that it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming for me, to be honest with you. Don't spread yourself thin. You don't need to be active on every social network, but you should have an account so you can listen. Luckily, there's not as many social media sites as there was 5 years ago. There's been some consolidation. Some of them have closed. But I agree with you. You should at least be focusing and listening. And I think that's the key thing. And every single one of these social networks has a different set of demographics. So, for example, Pinterest, I think it's something like 75% are active women. And then Instagram's the same way. It's just highly leaning towards women, whereas Facebook tends to be our grandparents. Snapchat tends to be millennials, and I don't have a Snapchat.
You don't? Oh, you're missing out.
No, I don't have one. And there's different social networks for different demographics, but I think being on there, listening, and engaging your audience where they are is, I think, what's really important. Would you agree?
I totally agree. One of the most interesting things about this slide for me, though, is the 4 networks that we profile here. Over 80% of their active users are outside of the USA. So if you have a business or are thinking about your business from a US-only standpoint, you are potentially missing out on 80% of the active users on all these different social media networks. And that could be huge amounts of money, depending on if you can find a way to reach them and value them and give them products or services. So I thought that was really interesting. And what was also cool here is, you know, you have Instagram, which is very female focused, Twitter, which is slightly more female focused, Facebook, which skews a little female, and LinkedIn, which has equal representation. And you can see kind of the ages at play here. Yeah, just very different needs, very different wants from each of these.
Yeah, and I think you hit something on the head, because where I live in the Philippines, and people aren't as engaged on Facebook. Everybody's got Instagram. It's crazy. Now everyone's on Instagram. Twitter, nobody uses it that I know of, local people, except for customer service. So we'll use it to get online and complain to our cable TV provider or our electrical company, hey, you need to come fix something. We'll use Twitter for that. Whereas Instagram, we're getting on there to maybe share our pictures and then, you know, check out other pictures that are out there, and either companies that are engaging. So every like you said, every one of these networks has a purpose. Are we on there? Is your business on there?
So again, you need to be taking time to think about your marketing roadblocks, especially in terms of online marketing, right? We didn't cover traditional marketing here. That's not really our expertise. There are lots of people that can give you traditional marketing advice, and you should be seeking that out. But in terms of online marketing roadblocks, you know, every quarter you should really kind of have a plan or a test or a trial or something that you want to work towards. Do you want to gain 100 followers on Twitter? I'm not a big fan of the whole gain followers, game followers. I'm more of a, how can you activate an audience, right? How can you, if you get 1 follower, how do you get that 1 follower to be your #1 fan, right? The kind of person that tells everyone about you. That's what you really need to do. That's the kind of things that you need to look at. And so you need to find out where those people are. You need to engage with them, as we've kind of said throughout this entire thing, and figure out how to kind of work forward to taking that 1 fan and making it 2, 3, 4, and making sure they're active and engaged and just working with you.
Yeah. So there's some great tools out there. Buffer, which basically allows you to manage some of your social media properties, that automate some of your content. MailChimp allows you to collect email addresses from your customers or potential customers, and then send them an email that engages them in some of your new content or some of your new products. PR Web, it's a great press release platform that's fairly affordable, that allows you to engage media. So you want to tell media about maybe a new product that you have out, a product launch, or maybe some executive changes or new store openings, or basically anything that is newsworthy. PR distribution is another one that I highly recommend. They're really super affordable, and yet they have a very similar distribution footprint as PR Web. So let's move right along into search. What is search?
Wow. I mean, out of the two of us, you're certainly the expert in this area. I mean, I have looked at SEO and seen so many people do the same thing I did back in the day when I first started out on the web. Ugh, SEO. It's a dirty word now. It's like a gross word. Like, it's like you're trying to trick or cheat or like, you know, do something bad. SEO, right? And I remember we used to talk about like, oh, there's like black hat SEO and gray hat SEO and white hat SEO. Like it was like hacking, right? Like you were hacking the web to be able to like win and more customers or win rankings. And yeah, so I mean, there's so much misinformation out there, and there's a ton of old information out there. But like,
Well,
you're more the expert than me.
Well, there is. It's really basically just SEO. I hate the term, honestly, at this point in the game. I mean, it's been 20 years. We should have kept up. But basically what you're trying to do is you're building a website, fast, secure, well-written, absolutely user-friendly, it meets modern web standards, and you're presenting that information that's easily digestible so Google can find it. So then Google can determine if you get users. So Google's basically saying, yes, your website is worthy. That's what it is. SEO is basically QAing your website. It's making your website optimized enough that Google's going to say, yes, we can send you web visitors. And it's pretty advanced. A couple things we want to touch on here. Backlinks. Backlinks are two things. It's a vote from another website that your site has something good, something amazing, not good. In the old days, people shared backlinks. Nowadays, nobody is sharing backlinks. So instead of having something good, you have to have something amazing. It's a signal to search engines to help categorize your site and audience. So basically a backlink from, let's say, for example, you have a real estate site, and you get a link from Inman, which is a major real estate publication. And Inman says, this realtor in Palm Beach has some great content. We decided to link to it from one of our articles. So Google sees that and says, we can, oh, okay, Inman trusts you enough to share your content. And so it allows Google to determine what your site's about. In competitive niches, getting the right links can be more important than getting the most links. So an example of that would be, are you getting links from the right places? Like, here's an example, Inman sending a link to a realtor. Another important one might be, did you pick up a link after running a press release from the New York Post, the New York Times, etc.? Google only loves you when everyone else loves you first. And that is an amazing quote from Wendy Pearsall. She's a great blogger, entrepreneur, has been out there for a long time, but I can't emphasize it enough. Google only will start sending you traffic when other people start sending you links. So let's talk about competitor analysis. How much time do you spend understanding your competition? And the reason that's important, do you know who's linking to them? Why are people trusting them? Why are people sending these powerful social signals to them? And you can't necessarily replicate everything that they're doing to have the same exact success. It can give you insights into what you need to do to rank near or better than them. So an example of that, circle around. Let's say you have a financial website. Are you getting the links from other people, your other competitors or industry journals? Are you getting those backlinks? So what are you doing to earn them? And really, when you do competitor analysis, you're basically just learning what they did so you can do it better, or at least do it as well as they did so you can rank alongside them, so Google will then reward you with more traffic. I'll let you jump into what are the search roadblocks.
So when we think about search roadblocks, you know, we've kind of covered a lot of them through this webinar. Bless you.
Thank you.
We've kind of covered a lot of search roadblocks as we've gone through this webinar, because search roadblocks are really content roadblocks. They're really linking roadblocks. They're really site speed roadblocks, right? These are all connected very tightly. If you want to rank well in search, you need to kind of make sure that everything else on your website is perfect or as good as it possibly can be. And so you need to basically consider your search roadblocks constantly, consistently. Like, again, they tie into everything else, and so you really need to spend most of your time thinking about search, right? There's still a lot of people coming to your site through search. A lot of social networks are kind of bundling search into their offering. So you'll see Facebook with their own search, you'll see Instagram with their own search, you'll see Twitter with their own search. But at the end of the day, these search engines all kind of lead back to your site. And so you need to kind of make sure that you are taking the time to do that right.
So I want to talk a little bit about search again. What are some of the leading industry publications and then also industry tools that I personally recommend and use? So I'm a subscriber over at Moz. It's a great platform of a lot of search experts and marketing experts that basically share their data and insights. And because of that, we're able to kind of get a lead in on what's actually going on with any Google algorithmic changes or any industry trends. Other ones are Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, and Brian Dean's Backlinko, which gives some insights differently. It's not about news on his site, but it's about how to actually take executable steps that your business can take to actually begin to rank better. And that's a great place. It also has some great training. So if you're looking to learn some more things about search, Backlinko has them. There's a lot of great SEO tools out there that you can use in your business. Ahrefs, it does link analysis, content analysis. A lot of great things can be learned about your site, your links, but also your competitors. SEMrush is another one that I highly recommend. And lastly is Raven Tools. Raven Tools is one I've used in the past. I haven't used it in a couple of years, but a lot of experts in the SEO space swear upon it. It's a great site analysis tool, but it also does link analysis and competitor analysis as well. There's a bunch of other tools out there, including cognitive SEO, which I highly recommend. Anything you can do to optimize your own content on your site is really helpful as well. So I'll let you give your closing remarks here, Malcolm. There's a lot of things that we covered today, but I think that the biggest focus that we've gone down is content's important, design's important, and there's people out there that can help you solve all these business roadblocks. What are your insights?
So, as you said, there are people out there that can help you. You don't have to do this alone. Build your team, right? Whether those people are part of your staff or not, build your team. Some key takeaways from today: you can't stop working on your web presence, right? Your website, your social media, all of that, bundles up as your web presence, and you can't stop working on it. You can't just put it aside for a couple of months while you work on other pieces of your business. It's like a leaf on a tree. It'll wither and die if you don't water it. Technology can play a major part in the success or failure of an online business. And again, like we said at the start of this, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily doing e-commerce online. It can just be, your lawyer site, your legal site, your dental site, a site that lets you take appointments, a site that lets you market content. Technology can play a major part in the success or failure of that business. Design is important, but user experience trumps it. So you can have a beautiful website, but if I can't navigate it, if I can't get around it because it's too cluttered, I'm sorry, you're probably not going to get the conversions you expect.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So moving down the line, you have to write well. Content is so important. And touching on that, not only write well, but write consistently. Are you publishing, 12, 14, 16 posts a month? You're going to get rewarded for it, but don't write for search engines. Revise and write for people. Write for people, write for people, write for people. I can't say that enough. Online marketing is not the Wild West like it used to be. There's not a free-for-all out there. So don't run around trying to trick Google or trying to trick people in general. You'll only be rewarded when you begin actually having conversations. That's what your content is, with real people that should be your customers.
So No pitch. We're not going to tell you got to buy our stuff. That's not what we're here for. We're not trying to get you to sign up for our email newsletter. We're not trying to sell you on our services. This is just a quick little slide to show you what we do, because we're still trying to make sure people understand that we don't just provide hosting. We do site speed optimization. We do online business consulting. Man, if I could speak, that'd be very helpful. And so feel free to check out our website. Hopefully some of this information has been useful to you. If you have any questions, comments, critiques, concerns, there are email addresses. As you can see, it's not some crazy like customer service or like info at. Those are our personal email addresses. Feel free to use them. And thank you all so much for watching.
Yep. Thanks again. You guys have a great evening.